Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hello. What are you up to for the next 4 months? Because I think around this time, say 9 o'clock every Thursday, I know what Ruby and I are going to be doing. We're going to be looking back on the preceding 7 days racing, picking out the good and not so good performances, looking ahead to the weekend's best action and trying to work out which of those horses will be best suited by the various races during the whole course of the season. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds like a plan anyway. I just hope it's a bit warmer when we get back in the studio.
You've been complaining about the temperature since we got here. I should explain why we're at Cheltenham, by the way. It's because Racing TV is moving house. We don't have a studio we can use at the moment. We hope to be back in it in a few weeks' time, but until then we'll be at racecourses or else in our respective houses in the
More
walls,
often
which
than
is
you think.
yeah, which is what you're going to vote for, isn't
Absolutely, every week. Suits me down to the ground.
Now, this time around, we're also going to be backed up by a team, the RaceiQ team, that have joined up with Ruby and also other members of Racing TV, and they're developing some data models, some metrics via which to deepen and broaden understanding in horse racing. And during the course of this series, we're going to be introducing some of those data models. And today, we're going to take a look at the lengths gained jumping model. And Ruby can explain a little bit more about that.
There are some deeper and sharper minds than mine involved in this now, thank God. But yeah, there will be various different ones. So obviously, it would be stride length, sectional timing, etc. But jumping is where we've elected to start. And how do you measure a jump? It's not just the actual jump. So it's become a jumping envelope. So it's 30 metres before jump, they jump, and 30 metres after. So you gauge how much a horse slows down, how much time it spends in the air, and then how long it takes them to get back up to their speed, giving them 30 metres either side of the jump.
And that 30 metres, was that known beforehand, or was that something that was developed
in
over
conversation? 30 metres is somewhere between 3 and 4 strides.
Right.
So if you think the average stride length of a galloping thoroughbred is 20 feet, 60 feet, so that's between 3 and 4 strides, depending on, not every horse has the same stride, not every jump is the same, not every fence is the same. Even Birch at Sandown is different to Birch at Cheltenham. So you have to try and put parameters in place, and 30 metres was selected.
And then, of course, you've got sort of speed into the fence and speed out of the fence, and that can prove critical as well. What do you think that tells us about a horse?
Different horses. Some horses will slow down because they're not particularly in love with jumping, and they will continue to slow down as they approach jumps. Some horses will love it, and they'll actually go a bit quicker, and you'll see that in their momentum as they're landing as well, how they pick back up their landing. It'll measure efficiency as well. Different race types, different efficiency. Do you go attacking fences in 2-mile chases? If you do the same thing in 3-mile chases, do you get tireder and jump slower later in the race? So it'll measure a whole lot of things.
And presumably for a specific horse, that how quickly they're in and out of the fence might change during the course of the race, depending on how they're going, how fit they are, their stamina, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. As you get tired, or especially regaining momentum, and a horse is no different than a human. Even yourself, I mean, if you're exercising, the longer you're going through your exercise.
I'm exercising?
Not you in particular. I was talking to you roadies at home. The longer you exercise, the harder it is to pick back up. When you're fresh at the beginning, you find it easier to regain speed. The longer you go, the harder it is to regain speed, and you'll see that with jumping as well.
Right, OK. And do you think over time it might tell us something about jockeys?
I'd say it will, yeah. It'll tell us what jockeys ride in certain ways, which jockeys, and especially I would have strongly believed that the last fences were the most important ones. How quick you were over the last 3 or 4 jumps could be the winning and losing of a race, and you'd see patterns like that developing. And
has it been interesting working with the RaceiQ team?
It has been hugely interesting, but I have felt like I was slightly back at school. Spreadsheets and data and numbers. I never looked at race cards for numbers of horses. They're all numbered now. I couldn't have told you. I know Annie Power was 13 when she won the Champion Earl. I know Papillon was 13. But I do know Bravemansgame was 3 in the Gold Cup and Galloping the Champ was 6, which I wouldn't have known only for RaceiQ.
I never in my life did I think I'd be sent spreadsheets by Ruby Walsh, but in the past week, that has happened.
There you are. You learn something new every day.
Absolutely. So, we're not claiming that we have all the answers about this.
No, and it's not. And it'll be interpretation as well. And you'll see that when we go through it. It'll be how you interpret it and how you use the data yourself to make a formula for yourself, or how you view a race. But the data is there, and it'll take everyone. Most people will read it differently.
Yeah, and during the course of this show, we're going to take a look at 2 races in this way. The Gold Cup from last season and also the Charlie Hall, zoning in on that particular focus, the final fence. But as I say, we'll be interested in what your feedback is or what your thoughts are about the data. And I think we'll be learning along with you during the course of this season. It's going to be exciting to see how this metric works and what it tells us about racing and what we learn from it, I think.
I'm just glad I'm retired.
Yeah, it could be bad news.
It could, yeah. It could
be. We're not there yet.
No, but
so there's time to smarten up.
Yeah, cards are marked.
Let's look at it that way. Okay, let's start with the staying chasers. So, the staying chase division, it's already got underway. There have been at least 3 really interesting races so far, but we're going to start with a quick potted recap of the significant points of last season. And the obvious place to start with our friends from RaceiQ is, Ruby, the Buddha's Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Yeah, and we're going to try and highlight the difference between Bravemansgame and Gentlemansgame at various different jumps as they went along. Now, the ones we've picked out basically in the first 12 fences are Bravemansgame gaining over a length on Gentlemansgame. Here they go to the first fence, Bravemansgame, Gentlemansgame right behind him. There was a length and a half in the difference in the jumping envelope at the first, and the same at the third fence. 1.58 lengths is the difference from Bravemansgame to Gentlemansgame. Now that could be argued because Bravemansgame has space to jump into and Gentlemansgame doesn't, that Bravemansgame is getting away much quicker. 1.39 here at fence 6, fence 9 is going to be the next one coming down the hill, 4th last. Bravemansgame could be quicker. 1.64 lengths was his advantage there. They get to the second last in the first circuit. This race a little over a length for Bravemansgame, and again, it doesn't look to be much wrong with Gentlemansgame's jump, but because he jumps into the back of the grey, he's nowhere to go. The first fence Gentlemansgame actually makes ground in Bravemansgame is this one, when he's out in the clear and Paul Townend has moved out off the outside. Fence 17, Bravemansgame gets in, Gentlemansgame pings it, but it's Gentlemansgame's landing speed that actually puts him up on Bravemansgame there. Down the hill to the third last, Bravemansgame was a little better than Gentlemansgame to the tune of half a length, and that was landing speed, I would have thought. And then at the last 2 fences, what's going to happen? This was a cracking race. Protectorat, Hewitt, conflated on the inside, Harry Cobden around and up on the outside, not going to let Sam Ewing out. Harry Skelton keeps in, watch Harry Cobden going in to make sure Sam doesn't get out. Paul comes around, but going to the second last fence, this is where Gentlemansgame gets the upper hand completely on Bravemansgame. And again, I would think it's landing speed. There's no difference in them both in the air, but it's how Gentlemansgame's able to accelerate on landing. And again, at the last fence, he's able to accelerate, whereas Bravemansgame wasn't. Now, in the whole context of the race, Bravemansgame jumped considerably better, or gained considerably more ground than Gentlemansgame. But at the end of the race, over the last 3 fences, Gentlemansgame came out on top, and he also came out on top in the race.
Okay, so Bravemansgame's quite exuberant, isn't he? Although his jump is quite efficient, the way he goes is quite full of zest, isn't it?
It's always at a high tempo, when that would suggest, look, he's a King George winner. Now, you can't argue that he didn't stay in the Gold Cup.
He didn't stay as well, though.
As well as Gentlemansgame, but I mean, he stayed better than the rest.
6.5 lengths better than completed, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a difficult one. And then you look at it and you think, ooh, is it efficiency? Was it always getting back up to speed really quickly? Did that tell on Bravemansgame at the end? Or was Gentlemansgame just popping around? Was he saving? I don't know. Time will tell us. But the data shows us that Bravemansgame was much more exuberant in the first 12 fences than Gentlemansgame.
Let's have a look at that graphic in full, and we can linger on it a while for you to have a look at it. So this it backs up your view going into this, that it's the latter stages that is the most crucial, but also it could highlight that Bravemansgame's relative stamina is coming to an end at the end of the race.
Possibly. I don't know. And I think that when you look at data and you gather data, it's how you interpret the data. I'm not sure. I think over time we will learn exactly what this means. But right now, I'm as green as anyone else.
And presumably you would also look at compare how a horse is jumping at the end with how a horse jumped at the start, and sort of over time, over a number of races, you'll get his he'll or her general speed out of a fence, you'll have an understanding of what that horse does.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And to me, when you looked at Galloping the Champ early, and maybe that will come with horses who are behind other horses. Maybe they aren't able to gather up the speed when they land. Like, is it good to be in a pocket? Is it better to have light? Like, Bravemansgame had a clear view all the way. So maybe, actually, he was conserving energy. And it was Galloping the Champ, by being covered up, was having to use more energy. We haven't been able to manage the energy. What we are able to gauge is the time and distance.
Okay. There's 7 lengths that Galloping de Champ puts between him and Bravemansgame from the final fence, which you wouldn't really have guessed when they started to go toe-to-toe from 2 out.
No, you wouldn't. But it was a brilliant race, and I'd say they're 2 very, very good racehorses. And look, obviously we've seen Bravemansgame already this year. We haven't seen Galloping de Champ yet. But it would make you excited. It makes me excited anyway.
Me too. Now, there will be people at home who are going, but how about Exor? How about Conflated? How about Noble Yates? Protectorat? Ahoy Senor, he was going really well when he, surprise, tipped up 6 out. Why have you looked at the Gold Cup through the prism of just 2 horses?
Because I think in the laws of averages, they're the only 2 from that race that are going to count. I don't, maybe Ahoy Senor if, which is a huge if, God, he's jumping together. But he looked home and hose at Aintree. And I think whatever challengers might come, they're going to be coming from last year's novices, not from the horses that were beaten in this year's Gold Cup.
Well, or one other horse, which is the one that we're going to look at next. Yeah. And this is the Punchestown Gold Cup, where those 2 horses that fought out the Cheltenham Gold Cup were floored by Fast or Slow.
Yeah, and when you watch this race live, the right 3 horses went to the 4th last: Bravemansgame, Envoy Allen and Galloping de Champ, and they looked like they were going to leave Fast or Slow behind them at the 4th last. But when they got down into the home straight, you can't say, it's the effects of Cheltenham on the other 3, because Fast or Slow ran into Corrie Rambler at the festival. Is he the improver? I have to see Fast or Slow again to really believe this, but this was one hell of a good performance, because if you say Punchestown flatter track, it puts Galloping de Champ 2 furlongs less closer to Bravemansgame. You say they've run bang to form and they're a long way clear of Envoy Allen. It's Fast or Slow seems to be the fly in the ointment there, and maybe that is form. Maybe that is what it is, and you should see what you believe, but I want to see it again.
Well, I think that's fair, because quite often you see end of term stuff.
Yeah.
And, I take your point about Fast or Slow had ran against Corrie Rambler and failed by a neck to concede in
when
weight.
I said last year's novices, maybe Corrie Rambler is the horse that's going to improve as well.
Right.
Now, I know we saw him already, but I wouldn't mind him. He takes a run, because he had the Grand National 1 with Beechers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's fair. Correct, and the comeback run. I mean, he, as you say, he would need. But to come back to Fast or Slow, it had a slightly end of term feel about it. The Gold Cup is the Gold Cup, and quite often that can leave a little bit more of a.
It can do,
because it's the top horses.
And it can do. You saw that with past Gold Cup winners. It left a mark on Cotosar. He wasn't as good a horse the following year.
It left
a mark on a Plutar, Manila Indo. The list is endless of horses that a Gold Cup has left a mark on, and that's one that Galloping de Champ has to answer yet.
Yeah, although he's 7 years of age, the youngest horse in the entire field, that could be good or bad, really.
It could go work either way, but it was not grueling is the wrong word, because it makes it sound harsh, but it was end to end.
Yeah.
It was a compelling race. I know Albon Photo won it at 7, but his first Gold Cup was a stop-start race. He was in front at the top of the hill, and then they dragged from there, whereas this year's Gold Cup, there wasn't a hiding place.
Now, in the Punchestown Gold Cup itself, is there an argument that the big 3, Envoy Allen, Bravemansgame and Galloping de Champ, just pressed on a little bit too much, 5 out?
There possibly is, and when we get down to sectional times and stride patterns and RaceiQ, we'd better prove that one as well.
And finally, the last fence error there. This is going to be a theme of this part of the show, from Bravemansgame. What are you thinking about that? Is it starting to be a habit, something that is highlighting perhaps stamina coming to an end? I know I keep going on this phrase, but just...
Maybe, but Cotto made plenty of last fence errors.
He did.
Still managed to win the races.
Yeah, you could tell me about those, yeah, okay. Right, let's move on to the Aintree Bowl. This is where Shishkin stepped up to 3 miles and on Ahoy Senor's home turf, downed him.
Yeah, and look, it was a story of Shishkin's year, wasn't it? Down to the first fence, up to 3 miles. He got on the bridle here, whereas he didn't in the Ryanair. 4th last fence, even Ahoy Senor Shishkin. Plutard in behind, he cried enough really quick. But here, to me, a high senior is gone and home for all money. I couldn't see him stopping when he jumped the second last to Brian Hughes. Shishkin is flat to the boards behind him. You're thinking, it's just pay out. Go on, Lucinda Russell has done it again. But for some whatever reason, he stops. And that allows Shishkin back into it, who comes running at him, pings the last for Nico. Plutar couldn't get going. But I couldn't remember watching this live thinking, I can't believe he's at the pulling up. I thought stamina was the one thing that a high senior was absolutely guaranteed. Bunny hops the last, he does that. But I didn't think I would say Shishkin outside the high senior.
Yeah. But he did.
He did, yeah. Does that make him a Gold Cup horse? Maybe it does, but Shishkin, I don't know about Shishkin.
He's a bit mercurial, isn't he?
That's a very good word if I understood it.
As in, he's very, very hard to predict.
He
can be one way or another.
That's exactly what he is. And I don't know, he's from a horse that was a Supreme winner, Arkle winner, he just seems to be getting slower quite quickly.
And I was going to ask whether it is connected to the pace, but, you know, he stepped up in the Ryanair and he just didn't look like he just didn't want to be there again.
No, even to the first fence, and we can see that in a minute. He was never on the bridle. And for a horse who didn't lack pace, look, he was like that in the Champion Chase when he pulled up. He looked lethargic in the Ryanair. Mercurial, that's a new word. My new word of the day.
Glad to be of service. Right, let's have a look at the Ryanair, shall we? This was won by Envoy Allen, and Shishkin, bang there, never going early.
No, look, you see Nico squeezing down into him. Look how easy Rachel is going at Envoy Allen compared to Nico and Shishkin. He just, to me, like even in a Gold Cup, when you line up here, he's going to need more enthusiasm and pace than that. There's the fourth last. They both make a mistake, both Shishkin and Envoy Allen. This year we'll be able to tell you exactly what those mistakes cost as he nearly fall off the platform here in Cheltenham. And look how easy Envoy Allen is going, and he's come back with a brilliant run at Down Royal this year. But this was the real Envoy Allen, who could also be described as mercurial.
I don't know whether I'd go that far about him. I mean, it's not quite so marked.
He's Gordon run.
Well, his King George run.
Runs.
Yeah, okay. All right. I still think that with Shishkin, I feel the swing is more marked.
Swing is more marked, yeah. But this is a good performance from Envoy Allen. He's going to go to Leopardstown at Christmas. He ran a great race in the north, and here comes Shishkin flying when it's all over. But look, is Shishkin a Gold Cup contender? He looks like he wants every yard of the trip nowadays anyway. But
that point you made about him not really going in the early stages, I think that's what the key to Galopin Des Champs is. He's an extraordinary tactical speed kind of horse for one that stays as strongly as that.
He is, but
and gets away from his fences quickly.
He does, but Shishkin is a very awkward ride. When horses are not carrying you, you always get in the wrong place. Every bit of trouble that's going in the race, you end up in it when you're not on the bridle. And that's where Shishkin will be.
He's not a Gold Cup winner then, for me. Anyway, but let's see what he can win during the course of the season. Let's have a look at the King George, first of all, shall we? Maybe it'll be that. And, of course, this was Bravemansgame's day.
Yeah, and the usual King George. Good size field, good charge down to the first fence. And it really suited Bravemansgame. And not unlike Weatherby. And this year, look, I don't think we have Lampresse, do we? Is he back in training or not?
I thought he was.
Well, great if he is. But you're going to have Gentlemansgame, and maybe you'll have Shishkin. And the King George is a brilliant race, and it will be a highlight of Christmas. I can't wait for it. He was brilliant last year, and he was going to win whatever happened at the last fence. Lampresse over jumps and unseats Charlie Deutsch at the last fence even. But I like Bravemansgame. Ping the last here, Lydia. I can remember Cato standing on this once or twice.
The King George is bang up Bravemansgame street, isn't it?
It is, and he's been very good at Kempton even as a novice. And yeah, that's a race that even I'll come from Ireland to watch.
Now, you slightly fooled me by suggesting that Lampresse might be back. I have to say, I had assumed that he is coming back. Now, he wasn't as well suited to the King George.
No,
there.
and he did look more of a Gold Cup type horse. Not even Gold Cup, but kind of not a fast 3 miles, a staying 3 mile kind of horse to me. And I hope he is back. I thought I read somewhere he mightn't be or he wasn't, so I'm not spreading rumours, and I'm sorry if I'm misleading anybody.
Well, I'm sorry if I am too. We need to move on to analyse this.
So we've looked back at last year's staying chases, now to look at the ones that have taken place this season, and we're going to start with the Ladbrokes Champion Chase at Down Royal, and Gerri Colombe, Jack Kennedy. In front of him is Conflated Sam Ewing, Manila Indo and Envoy Allen. Now, Jack Kennedy has ridden Conflated on a few occasions. He knows Conflated goes to his left, but when he lines up, he still finds himself behind and to the outside of Conflated. Conflated jumped across Gerri Colombe at the first and again at the second, but look at all the space on his inside onto our left but to Sam Ewing's right. Into that spot is where Jack needs to be, and he makes a mistake at the third fence because of Conflated coming across in front of him. Now, I am being critical of Jack Kennedy because I expect so much of him because he's such a good rider, but he needs to get the other side of Conflated. In the middle of the race, he's committed to his outside, but it has to be in his head as they climb the hill, I need to get the other side of Sam Ewing, and he doesn't. He goes up on Sam's outside going to the third last because he wants to inject a bit of pace, but Conflated goes left. Watch Sam Ewing having to haul Conflated back, but that's making Gerri Colombe come a long way around and making it very difficult for him. Rachel Blackmore in the blue cap has watched all of this going on, and she's now riding into that gap that's been left by Conflated. Jack had a look, can't come in now because Rachel is there, and when they get to the second last fence, Conflated again out to his left and brings Gerri Colombe with him, and that opens a golden highway for NYLN. Now Jack gets slightly lucky here because NYLN at the last puts down and loses a tiny bit of momentum, and that allows Gerri Colombe to get back into it. Now it's a really good performance. NYLN, Conflated and Manila Indo all had a run under the belt. Gerri Colombe didn't. He does really well to win, but the one thing he has to improve on as well is Gerri Colombe needs to start landing with more momentum than he has. He lands quite static, and that always puts him on the back foot.
So I was really impressed with Gerri Colombe there. I thought by the time he got to the line, he was well on top. He had all of that inconvenience of being carried out left that you mentioned. But for me, that was the key thing, the only thing I could throw at him. And I think it's noticeable in the Brown advisory that we'll be looking at later as well, is that staticness, that he's not quick away from his fences. And for me, that is the big contrast between him and who stands as his main rival at the moment, Galopin Des Champs.
Yeah, and look, even at the graphic we showed in the beginning, you could argue maybe Galopin Des Champs was static through the early part of the Gold Cup because he was losing ground, but when the chips were down, Galopin Des Champs landed Galopin. We know he can, and we know he did that, and he sets the standard. But I'm sure if you're Rob Corr or Gordon Elliott and even Jack Kennedy, you're left down Royal fairly happy with Gerri Colombe.
Definitely, definitely. They've got one more race, Gordon is thinking, prior to the Gold Cup. It's just the Gold Cup. It's a one-race season as far as Gordon Elliott's concerned, isn't it? Yeah,
and look, Gold Cup horses are not easy to come across. There's not that many of them around, and there never ever has been. But like, you'll have one more run. You're assuming that'll be at Leopardstown, be it Christmas or the Dublin Racing Festival. But I think Leopardstown is tailor-made.
This time last year, we were talking about Galopin Des Champs and was his jumping the full package. And when he came back, we saw that he'd actually improved his technique. Is there time with just one start between now and the Gold Cup for Gerri Colombe to improve his technique? Is the type of horse who's likely to be able to do that?
Yeah, I'd say he jumped better at Aintree than he probably did at Cheltenham.
I agree.
So with the run under his belt at Down Royal, there is a good train of thought that he would jump slicker and quicker the next day too.
Yeah, I think that's what I'll be looking for from him next time. I thought Enver Allen ran a much better race in defeat than he did when winning that race last year. Yeah,
he did, and he's still a very, very good horse, and he will be a player in the Ryanair, but
apart from his mercurial tendencies.
And the horse in the same colours as him. Could he come back and beat him?
Allaho, indeed, yeah, we'll be looking at Allaho in a few moments' time. Conflated, we should mention him, only because it looks like Gordon's thinking cross-country chase with the Galvin Delta Work move of running him in graded races and then pitching up at the festival and running in the cross-country.
Yes, that's it's all about winning, isn't it? And that, can you see him winning the Gold Cup? I can't.
Can you?
No.
No. Okay. And Manila Indo, what did you think? Is he showing his age?
Yeah, Manila Indo, he's definitely become mercurial. Is that the right way of saying that word?
Yeah, I think there's more bad than good. I think he's dropped to a level. And
yeah, he was definitely the fittest horse at Punchestown when he won on his comeback run, and he got dictating it at a slower tempo that seemed to allow him to build into the contest. Where he goes now, he'd probably go to Leopardstown, but yeah, it's a difficult one.
So now we move to the Charlie Hall, and in a moment we're going to have a look at the last fence issue with RaceiQ. But first, here's a potted view of the whole race, Ruby.
And there's a high senior doing what a high senior has a habit of doing, making a mistake, turned into the back straight, and Bravemansgame and Gentlemansgame just up to the notch, as happens in Wetherby when you turn away from the stands, and then they went toe-to-toe down the straight. Now, to my eye, watching this race live, it's Bravemansgame he wanted to be on, but there's the first signal. Harry Cobden is switching his whip from his right to his left, and he didn't pull away. That's a signal to go faster. He didn't pull away from Gentlemansgame, who keeps sticking into him. Now, Harry is Not exactly slowing Bravemansgame down here to my eyes. Good jump at this fence. Gentlemansgame was flat to the boards behind him, and then they go to the last. Harry is squeezing. He rides deep, extends this horse to it. He meets it very long, sits to let him pop it, and Bravemansgame comes out of his hands, catches the top, but it's on landing then. The nod, the stumble, and what we're going to show you with the racing IQ is how much speed he loses and how much momentum Gentlemansgame keeps. And that is the difference. It pushes Gentlemansgame past Bravemansgame, and he runs out a good winner. I think with Gerri Colombe in the mix, that he could end up in the King George with Bravemansgame.
Gentlemansgame?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I hope he does.
I think it'd be great. And throw in Shishkin, then it'd be a belter.
That would be great. Well, think about Gentlemansgame and where he is in his career in a moment, but there is the view of what happened in the Charlie Hall Gentlemansgame versus Bravemansgame. And the key point about the last fence is that Bravemansgame only lost 0.85 of a length, was beaten 1.75 of a length. So quite literally, it didn't cost him the race. However, his speed recovery time was 1.4 seconds slower than that of Gentlemansgame. And
that's the thing, it's the complete shift of momentum late in the race that pushes Gentlemansgame past Bravemansgame. It's the very last bar on the right of your screen as you're looking at it. You can measure it factually as say, well, that's what he lost lengthwise. But when you look at the speed loss and how long it took him to recover the speed, that's what's just shoved Gentlemansgame past him.
I was looking at each of the last 4 fences and the speed recovery from Bravemansgame out of each one. 0.44 out, 0.43 out, instantly 0.02 out, got an absolute flyer there, and the last 2.0. So it had a very big effect. Is that, I mean, it's down to us to kind of project as to what that was. Is that fitness and or stamina? Either, but probably fitness here, I think, in sapping ground, much more sapping ground than 12 months earlier when he won this race. Did that impact of the mistake mean that because he wasn't fit, it took him more time to be able to recover from it?
Yeah, it's a bigger effort, but I would think that is the same at the end of any race. Now, even no matter how fit you are, when you're coming to the end of your momentum, to regain speed is very difficult. I often came back in after riding a horse that made a simple mistake and would say, that mistake at the last cost me. And people would be looking at you thinking, what are you on about? Because you could feel the momentum going and that you were never able to regain. And that's what happened to Bravemansgame. He lost the momentum that I would say he never quite regained.
Okay. Let's ask you, well, we asked you this question. Did that final fence error cost Bravemansgame victory? Which way do you think they went?
I would have thought surely the majority went yes.
Let's see.
Just about.
Only just. It's almost like a referendum, that, isn't it?
Ask them again now and see what they think.
If only we could. Let's have a look. Lots of people show they're working. Let's start with Steve Duggan, who says, he said yes, but it shows that Bravemansgame is more speed than stamina.
He agrees with you, Lydia.
I think there is an element to that. We have 2 people who think it's Harry Cobden's fault. Jamie Dawson and also Lukey67. I can't have that, can you? I don't think he could get clear.
I agree with you. I don't think he could get clear either. I mean, Harry... so many jockeys ride so many different ways, but Harry rides with a lot of leg, and when Harry is going, upper body is moving, there's not usually as much left as you think.
I think he was aware that the fitness, the heavy ground,
I think he was to about 98% anyway, and not wanting to go to 100.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Philip Murphy, on the other hand, kind of thinks it's Paul Nicholls' fault for choosing the Charlie Hall over the Betfair Chase. I can kind of see it. I'm not, ascribing fault, but he would have been fitter for another couple of weeks.
You would have thought so, but does he run him? What's Haydock to Christmas, Charlie Hall to Christmas? Probably suited him better.
Well, yeah, the flip side to that coin, of course. I mean, he did mention the Betfair Chase in passing. I thought he'd just go straight to the King George, but there is that time when he thought that the dual winner Clandis Oboe basically left his King George behind by running in the Betfair Chase, and it can often be a slog in the mud.
It can be, yeah. It can, yeah. It's obviously never stop Cotto.
3, Mr. Christian. Right, the next one is Sam Matthews, who said, no. The more times I watch it, he thinks he lost little momentum and had time to recover.
I think we dispelled that myth.
Dave Deere says it's much better form than beating Eldorado Allen by 3 lengths getting weight. Absolutely correct, Dave. It very much is. Also feel like I'm the only person noticing that horse with only 2 previous chase runs has just beaten the Gold Cup runner-up. Well, you might feel like that, Dave, but we're going to talk about it in a moment. David Lace reckons, no, he got outstayed and he's not that good anyway.
Harsh, Dave. David even.
Just a little bit. And then we've got the Oracle, and he pronounceth that Bravemansgame's never found anything off the bridle. Those lengths, 6.5 lengths, he pulled clear of the Gold Cup field, the best staying chasers around, whilst under pressure against Galopin de Champs. That is obviously a collective figment of all of our imagination.
I must watch back to King George again. He looks to be off the bridle going to the last in that too, when he was going to beat Lampressa. Yeah,
I can't have it that Bravemansgame is not really good enough. We know that he is. He was an excellent King George winner. But Gentlemansgame, that was only his 3rd chase start. He only had 1 run over fences as a novice. He came back and ran really takingly on his seasonal debut. He likes staying, he likes deep ground. There's a lot to like about him. What do you think he could be?
Yeah, and Connections were hoping that the step up to 3 miles would bring about a bit of improvement, and it most certainly did. And it'll be interesting to see. I know Brian Atkinson wants to keep them apart. It'll be interesting to see what they do at Christmas. I think it'd be wonderful if Gerri went to Leopardstown and Gentlemansgame went to the King George. I think that'd be magic.
That would be absolutely marvellous. And we should mention Ahoy Senor, who finished last of 5, running abjectly in the Charlie Hall this time last year. And here ran better for a long way until one fence, I don't know whether it was the ninth or something like that, where he basically put all 4 legs in one side.
That's what he did at the last fence in the Betfair Bowl. He has a habit of doing that, and I have a feeling it's not from the lack of schooling.
Now, he took a big step forward on his 2nd start last year. That was in the Many Clouds. He's heading towards the Coral Gold Cup, which is what I wish he'd run in last year. But anyway, he's going this time around. Newbury, we know that suits him. He could run well in that.
He could run a huge race.
Yeah.
And look, obviously he'd be a huge addition to the Coral Gold Cup, just as Stage Star and the Real Whacker will be in here on Saturday. I mean, 2 Grade 1 winning novices from the festival contesting the handicap, looking to try and exploit their marks before they have to step into graded waters, I suppose. But yeah, a horse like Clanders or Ahoy Senor would really open up the Coral Gold Cup.
Yeah.
Make some people think, wow, I could have a chance there off 10, 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Right, let's have a look at the King George VI chase betting. And it was interesting to me that whereas Bravemansgame was pushed out to 14-1 after the Charlie Hall for the Gold Cup, he pretty much held his position in the King George betting. 2-1 was as big as he went. Shishkin's there, Allah, who we'll see in a moment, is there. Galopin, who I can't imagine he'll run. But Gerri Colombe is Thames, and we don't even have Gentlemansgame there.
No, I'd say that maybe Mouse Morris said he's not coming, but I don't know. I haven't watched him win on Wetherby. You'd think, yeah, if I can win on Wetherby, I'd have a go at Kempton. I know I would anyway. And obviously what the Real Whacker does on Saturday will have a huge bearing on his price.
OK. Let's take a look at Allaho, shall we? Because he missed the whole of last season with quite a serious spleen injury. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a spleen injury, which was quite rare as well. Now here he was, jumped a bit to his left at the first fence and again at the second fence. And when he goes up to the bend past the stands, he runs off it, and Paul Townend has to switch his whip. Now, Paul should have started with his whip in his left hand for the start, but by switching his whip, it sets Allaho alight up the hill in Clonmel, and you can see how far he puts clear of Janadil climbing in Clonmel. This is for a horse that hasn't run in a year and a half. Gets in close then to that was the 4th fence. But I think on the whole, Lydia, this is him down to the 2nd last. He looks like he's getting tired, still jumps it well. Janadil is as tired behind him. But when Paul jumps the last on him and starts to grab a hold of him, I think, whilst it's slow motion, he does look to lengthen and try and go away and win. For a horse that's been off so long, he's done well to win. He always improves for his first run. Good starting point for him, but deeper waters lie ahead.
Yeah, it was very, very testing as well. So he was a bit rusty at his fences, and as you say, he got that run on.
Yeah, he got that run as well. He'll improve plenty, and like he was very workmanlike when he won a John Durkin with Patrick and bolted in a Ryanair. been workmanlike in the past on his first run.
Now he can't can't go to the John Durkan, which is where he started his campaign of 2 seasons ago when he won his second Ryanair at the end of it, because Galopin de Champ's there, and also it's moved in the calendar to become too close to the Clonmel
next
Oil.
weekend, yeah.
So where do you think we might see Allaho?
I don't know where he'll go next. Obviously, last year the intention was the King George, but he didn't get there. It'd be interesting will he go. He obviously won over 3 miles at Punchestown, so I'd imagine he'll go up in trip rather than back at Christmas. Whether that's at Leopardstown or he goes to the King George, I'm not sure.
Okay, let's have a look at the betting for the Ryanair, just because it interested me that Allaho is straight to the top at 100 to 30. John Bon, where will he end up this season? Might he be headed here? And then there are a number of others, some of whom we're going to see this Saturday, who could be ending up here. Edwardstone might be going up in trip, and the title holder is Envoy Allen, who, as we've just said, ran right up to his very best in Down Royal, is 16 to 1.
On ground that would definitely have been slower than he wanted. He's a horse who hasn't had any injury issues. Allaho, I don't know, will that spleen ever come back against him or not? He still has his. I know mine is gone, so it's not going to come at me. But
is that just random? You know what?
Yeah, it was. I never heard of it in a horse. Now maybe other people have. I never heard of it before. Showed signs of colic, yet you knew he wasn't colicking, so they had to go investigating. But I'd say Envoy Allen is way overpriced.
Yeah, it's a big price.
I'm putting him up.
Only thing against that, it was a weakish Ryanair, wasn't it?
I don't care. He's a better horse than good ground.
You're putting him up?
Yeah.
Is this a bet?
I never noticed he was 16 to 1. Yeah, I am, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Mark the date and time. This is really early. Unprecedented, I think, from Ruby in Road to Cheltenham. The very first show,
that
I bet.
just jumps out at me.
Right. There you go. I wasn't expecting that. Can you tell? Right, OK. Let's have a look at this Saturday's Paddy Power Gold Cup, shall we? Because that is relevant to the Ryanair. Here are the decks for it. The Real Whacker, the brand advisory winner, is there with Santos and Davis on board. Stage Star, who won the Turners for Harry Cobden. Also, not long till May, he was an excellent second in that same race. Adam Wedge on board. Unexpected Party, who ran further back down the field, was intended to run in the Grand Annual last season. He is there as well. So let's have a look at the Brown Advisory. I've already mentioned it in passing in saying that the key difference, I think, between Gerri Colombe and the Real Whacker was the Real Whacker attacked every fence and Gerri Colombe was just a bit static.
Everywhere. That's probably his slowest jump. Braun jumped up by him at the second. Third fence, he's really good at it. And even at the seventh, he's really quick. He doesn't arch his back, the Real Whacker. Keeps his hind end quite low, gets up in front. Even at the 10th fence, gets in close, but he's really fluent over and he always lands galloping. Good and brave at the 16 fence down the back, which is the last ditch, and then when he needed to be, keeps going and digs it out over the last 2 fences. Now, for me, looking at him as regards a Paddy Power Gold Cup horse coming down in trip, will he have the early place to hold a decent position? He maybe. I don't know him well enough. Maybe he does.
I think
his
he
jumping will definitely help him, and if he gets in the van and gets into a good rhythm jumping, he's going to give plenty of 2.5 mile horses all they want of it.
He's kind of the Allaho type of horse, isn't he? I'm not saying he's as good as Allaho at his peak, because Allaho I thought was a tremendous horse. But he's a horse that probably does stay a little bit further and would have to be ridden, I think, quite attackingly in a Ryanair.
I would imagine he will be ridden quite attackingly. Is he a Gold Cup horse or a King George horse? Time will tell. But look, if he wins here Saturday, he has to go King George, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he should. And that would be a different thing than the Gold Cup. I'd certainly fancy Gerri Colombe to beat him home in the Gold Cup. I'd see the Ryanair being more up his street.
Maybe, yeah, but there's obviously a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and then, but I'd say he's a fair horse.
Yeah, and of course he'll be coming up against Allaho.
I know he's a fair horse, but I'd say when you look at the form of that, Gerri Colombe, Braun, what was behind him?
I Am Maximus, the Irish Grand National winner.
That's probably strong form.
Yeah, it generally is. I love the Brown Advisory. It tends to be a strong race. Now, let's have a look at the Turners Novice Chase. I'd be interested to see how deep you thought this was. I
don't know. I think Stage Star got a good ride in front. He got into a really good rhythm. James de Burley missed the first. Mighty Potter Appreciated dropped in. They never really got into the race, but Harry Cobden dictated things, but this horse got into a brilliant rhythm in front, down the back straight, put down on Harry at the first one down the back, but it was the rhythm he got into after that. really slick from A to B. He never missed a beat, and he didn't give horses that were sat probably a fraction far off the pace a chance to get into the race. They had to go and chase him up the hill, and before he got to the top of the hill where he made a mistake at the fourth last, the others had to go and chase him. He put them all under a bit of pressure. Harry was able to fill him up not long till May came at him off the home turn, and he goes to the second last. Again, a really good jump. Jumping was key to it here for Stage Star, and he even jumped like a horse that could go back and trip. He jumped that slick and was so good at it. Appreciated ran in. Mighty Potter runs out, and Stage Star keeps going. I don't know. To me, that wasn't a stronger race as the round advisory.
No, I don't think it was either.
And obviously he's rated that way. The handicapper thinks the same. What will happen on Saturday? Be a good race, won't it?
It will be. I think not long till May will run really well.
And has a run under his belt, not long now till May as well.
I think that's key.
Not long till May even.
I thought he shaped quite well.
Yeah.
In that as well.
Yeah. Could do.
Yeah.
Did you get home there?
That's an interesting one, actually.
It's on the new course, old course. That was the new course even. Old course this weekend. Might find it a bit easier.
That's interesting. That hadn't really occurred to me, but possibly it was coming to an end. Yeah, interesting. Right, okay. So you've already got a selection.
Just thought Envoy Allen stuck out there.
Okay, that's 16-1 for the Ryanair 2024. That is the staying chasers so far.
Welcome along to another episode of the Punters Panel.
Bang the drum for that in bumpers last year. It's going to be a nice novice hurler. I think you win a good handicap.
Would you care to maybe try for one other one? Just because we're here and cameras are on and stuff. Can we get a pint for Ruby or a Red Bull or something?
He will probably come with John Wayne lookalike on him, more than likely at the same time.
Here, do you want those?
Catch the imagination.
Well, someone may as well do it.
I knew you were going to go. I'm going to correct you, but I just said no as well.
That's where you end up with your Paddy Power World Cup.
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Now we're going to have a look at the mares who chase, and there's been quite a bit of action in this division already this season, but we're going to start by looking back on the Mrs. Paddy Power Mares Chase at the Cheltenham Festival.
Yeah, look, that started at the back, obviously. Allegory Devassi and Impervious are the two we're looking at. Pink colours, white, and the white cap Impervious. And they were side by side for a lot of this race. Up to the fourth last fence, still can't separate them. Both jumped it well. Third last fence, Impervious manages to get in front of Allegory Devassi. Paul Townend follows Brian Hayes into the straight Riviera. The tail parted there, side by side of the second last. And to me, it's 6-1, half a dozen of the other. Paul looked to be slightly the better. Impervious is a bit slower at the last, and Allegory Devassi lands and gets a run on her, but Impervious digs in and comes back to beat Allegory Devassi. It was a really good race last year. A lot of people give out about it, but it was 13-8, 15-8. Take your pick. A way of getting out for a lot of hunters.
At the time, I wondered whether holding up Allegory Devassi had played absolutely to her strengths, because she'd been ridden to the front and she's such a good jumper when she sees a stride. That was what I was wondering immediately afterwards.
Yeah, I didn't leave here thinking anything other than the best horse on the day won.
Yeah, there is the battle-hardened element of Impervious, isn't there? By the way, we've both given up and gone for the gloves, you might have noticed, yeah. Both of us.
And we've also did a bit of homework, and I do now realise that Gentlemansgame has to be supplemented for the King George, but it was a miss not having him in it.
Well, he could be supplemented, yeah. Anyway. I thought it was the case, but I wasn't sure. Back to the mares. Impervious, I mean, she was tremendous. I love her head carriage. She is just so game. I can't wait to see her this season.
Yeah, and look, touch wood we will. She didn't appear in Clonmel. She hasn't run since Punchestown last year. She's a really good mare, but this division is becoming really strong, and I think one that's come out of the woodwork, there's a couple come out of the woodwork. Dino Blue was second here in the handicap last year to Mazzicata, and obviously then On Stee as well, who was second to Allegory Devassi at Clonmel. OK,
that's what we're going to look at next. The Clonmel mares listed chase, won by Allegory Devassi against her stablemate On Stee, and in the red colours, as Ruby mentioned, the Grand Annual winner Mascada.
Yeah, and the first fence, that was uncharacteristic for Allegory Devassi to make a mistake, but then she started jumping much better. I think it was. I think she's... Not saying to be mad keen on riding anymore, but I wouldn't mind going out on her. On Stee jumps left at the second last, and that was the losing, because Paul Townend got a run through on Allegory Devassi. Had he to come around On Stee, would he have won? I'm not so sure. These two mares probably wasn't much between them, and Honesty giving it away at the second last. Probably Massacada 2.5 is just far enough for her.
Yeah, I thought she shaped actually quite well for a drop back to 2 miles. The reason why I questioned that was because there's been another time when Allegorie de Vassy in the early stages of a race has almost put Paul Townend on the floor. She's got a very bad jump and a very good jump in her.
That was in Thurles, yeah. She jammed on, didn't even up around her ears. But I think there's a really good jump in there, and I would imagine going out to ride her, you'd be thinking jumping was one of your strengths rather than weaknesses.
Okay, well, let's hear what Paul Townend had to say after winning the race, because he had some interesting thoughts.
I suppose it was brilliant to get her back, and the season petered out in her last year. She was very disappointing the back end of it after running a good race to a very good mare in Cheltenham. So to come back and win today was a nice starting place for her. Again, there's plenty to work with, I think, for her for the rest of the season. But she was again tired finishing, but she had every chance to not go through it. She was questioned about last year, and she didn't. She galloped out to the line. So hopefully she can let the couple of bad runs behind her the back end of last season, and she's probably matured a bit for the summer as well.
Okay, so it's a stiff track, Clonmel. It was deep ground, and Paul Townend is clearly pleased that she's been able to finish off her race so well. You're smiling at me. He's also suggested that a summer out has made her fitter, but he's definitely questioned her finishing effort, particularly in the final 2 races of last season. So that made me want to go back and have a look at them.
Was he saying it was questionable, or was he referring to other people questioning it?
I don't know.
I
took it to be him questioning it in his mind.
Yeah, obviously she jumped to the front and got to the front to win in Cheltenham and didn't, so maybe that is in the back of his mind, but time will tell. See which mare he rides come the day.
Can I put another theory in as well before we have a look at those last 2 races? Might she be better? She definitely stays 2.5 miles. Might she be better at 2?
She could be, but I think if she's going to win at 2, she'll have to use that jump, and you're not sure about it.
That's true as well, because we can see from Dino Blue how well she jumps that's an asset over 2 miles. Right, okay, so let's have a look at the 2 runs that Paul was referring to. We'll start with the Ferry House Mares Novices Chase that came immediately after the Cheltenham Festival, a relatively quick reappearance for Allegorie de Vassy, and up against Honesty again. Yeah,
and Honesty obviously hadn't come to Cheltenham, Allegorie did, and I think it just told an Allegorie and Honesty. Even though Allegorie looked like winning on to the second last, by the time we got to the last, the race was over. Allegorie de Vassy makes the mistake, but I think she was getting empty and makes a mistake at the last, too brave, and lands on it, and Honesty runs away from her. I wouldn't put too much reading into Punchestown after that then. It was her last run. It wasn't even a novice chase in Punchestown, but it was her last run of the season. But I'd say Honesty was a mare we did think was a very good mare that didn't maybe live up to it in the beginning, and I'd say she's starting to come. Here she is running up, running down behind Impervious, Ellie May back and forth, but as Paul had said in his interview, she was gone at this stage in Allegorie, and Impervious just confirmed her superiority.
Yeah, well, she really did stamp her authority on that particular race. It's just particularly Fairy House, and I take the point it was a quick reappearance from Cheltenham, but she cruised up on the inside of Honesty, and you were just thinking, oh, come on, how far? And then folded, just
yeah,
folded.
Really folded, but like from the back of actually it was from the takeoff side of the second last fence. From you looking at the third dash thinking how far, and then potentially got to the second last, it was all over, but the horses, aren't they?
Then there's Honesty, as you rightly mentioned. I mean, she's a year younger than Allegorie de Vassy. I thought she ran an absolutely corker, astute ride at Clonmel. She looked as though she settled a lot better than usual. Does she need to go right-handed?
She definitely jumps to her left, so go on. That's just she wants to go left-handed, no?
Well, I mean, when I look back at her form, there's a toy, there's another earlier one left-handed that seems to be below the level of her right-handed form.
Yeah, but just even thinking, there's not as many mares chases left-handed in Ireland as you think. It's only Naas, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. I liked that run, that comeback. I thought it was pretty good. But I particularly liked the Barbastown Castle chase, which was won by Dino Blue, and she beat the boys. Phil Dorr was second, and there's poor old Sir Gerard as well next to her.
Yeah, Hope the Blonde jumped out here and went a good gallop, and you know, by the time they get away from the stands and away opposite the stands, you can see there's a good spread on the field. Hope the Blonde, Dino Blue, brilliant jumper, Sir Gerhard, Fieldor and Panda Boy. And look, you watch Dino Blue in front here. She's a brilliant jumper. She's really good with her front feet. I think she had the measure of these anyway. Sir Gerhard clips the top of the second last and goes over on his head. Thankfully, both he and Paul Townend got up. Fieldor came at Dino Blue then to have a go. They're going to the last. Another really good jump from Dino Blue at the last. And I think Mark thought maybe he was home, he has a look, sees Jack coming and has to really get after Dino Blue, but I thought she saw it out well. Her jumping was really good last year. She just went under to Impervious at Cork. She made 2 mistakes here at Cheltenham.
The last two fences.
The last 2 fences that really cost her, and which was completely out of character for her. But I think looking at her, she looks a stronger mare this year, and I think 2.5 will be right up her street.
I thought she looked like she was running on fumes towards the end, like first time out kind of performance. Otherwise, I think she'd have won that more comprehensively.
So do I, but I think there's plenty to work on there with her, and she'll have a good year.
Excitingly, Willie Mullins was talking about her taking on the geldings. Does that mean that we might see her in Grade 1 company over Christmas at Leopardstown?
Possibly, yeah, because whilst there's plenty of mares novice chases, there's not a glut of mares open chases. So I think Naas in January could be the next open mares chase in Ireland.
Okay, so but still Willie is also working back from the Mrs. Paddy Power here at the festival over 2.5, which would require her staying a bit further, and he was making the argument from her pedigree that you can see that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Willie has to confirm it for herself between now and then. I'd say he'd be happy enough to keep her at 2 miles and pitch up here in March, assuming she's going to stay.
It's hard to argue, given that Moscada won the Grand Annual by about 6.5 lengths, that the last 2 fences cost Dino Blue, but I mean they were massive errors. And the thing about
mistakes.
that was that she had jumped so well behind Global Citizen, the title holder.
And even with Impervious in Cork, her first day in Cork, that day in Naas, and even her 2 runs since at Punchestown and Ferryhouse, I think they were really out of character.
Let's take a look at the betting for the Mrs. Paddy Power, mainly because this is the first time probably that most of these will meet. And again, I'm asking myself why Impervious is 9-1, the title holder.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see any entries for her or anything, so I wonder where she is. That'd probably be the question mark with her, and I can see why Dino Blue, Ilagoy Devassi. Yeah, look, that'll be interesting. Look, and we have them in the first show because we're probably not going to be talking about them again for a long time. But look, we'll see what the turn of the year brings before we really get interested in these.
But this is a division that's getting deeper and deeper every year that we talk about it, I think.
Yeah, and I think that can't be a bad thing. I think that race in time will prove to be a really good addition to the festival. I know a lot of people gave out about it in the beginning, but I think it is a good addition.
I tend to agree. Right, so those are the mares. We're going to finish up with the 2 mile chasers. Now, this is a division where we've already had some bad news. The dual Queen Mother Champion chase winner, Energumen, was announced is going to be missing the entirety of the season. It's a hind leg injury?
Hind leg injury, yeah, it is disappointing, but as I said to Willie, at least he's a dual champion chase winner. You're not hoping could he win a champion chase.
But it's a great shame, isn't it?
It is a great shame, but look, he was a brilliant winner, and it's a pity he's going to miss it, but thankfully it's not life-threatening.
But it is. We're not expected to see him the whole season.
I would be very surprised if you did. I didn't think Willie was overly bullish, but you never know.
Okay. That means that Al Fabiolo, presumably, if he wasn't already, is now favourite child in the 2 mile chasing division, is it not?
Yeah, he is, and he looked like the one horse that was going to be a real contender. So you're looking at, well, if he doesn't have to contend with Energumen, what's going to contend with El Fabiolo? And I think it's safe to say it's probably what came out of last year's novice division as well, and that's even when you look at last year's champion chase and you see how dominant Energumen was.
Yes.
Edberstone has to bounce right back, doesn't he?
Yes. So with Al Fabiolo, if he moves into favourite child role, that means Hilly Way, he'll be kind of taking that route, will he?
I would imagine that's the road Willie sees to Cheltenham as a road that works. So yeah, I would think so.
Okay, and so on this side of the Irish Sea, we've obviously got John Bon, who had his colours lowered by El Fabiolo, but it's obviously a top-class horse himself. Are we going to see any of Willie's other horses, the other children, coming over and taking John Bon on this season?
I don't know. Sure, look, Dino Blue and San Raw both are 2 mile horses, both in the same colours as John Bon. I'd be very surprised. Dysart Dynamo probably does start this weekend in the 4-3. Where will he fit in against El Fabiolo? And outside of that, I can't think of too many more.
No. OK, so John Bon could have it all of his own way, potentially, unless Edwardstone bounces back.
Yeah, and so we'll find that out on Sunday, won't we?
Yeah, well, we'll certainly find out a little bit more. I noticed when you went through all of Willie Mullins's that you didn't mention Ferny Hollow. Now, there'll be people at home who are thinking about Ferny Hollow. We haven't seen him for 2 seasons.
Else to be talking about, exactly.
This season of Road to Cheltenham, the role of Monkfish will be played by Ferny Hollow.
Ferny Hollow is in Close Sutton, but whether for Ferny Hollow ever again sees a racecourse, who knows?
How long has he been in Close Sutton?
Ferny Hollow would make me look pretty solid, and I was fragile enough.
That's true. I mean, in terms of anti-post betting, I think it's back. But how long has he been back in Close Sutton?
He's not there that long, but he is there, and
okay.
Look, we'll see where he ends up, but I'm not holding my breath.
OK. Right. Well, let's see where the division stands as of the end of last season, starting with the Queen Mother Champion Chase. And sadly, we're looking at the horses that finished behind Energumen.
Yeah, and this race was over, I would say over that early. Editor de Geet went a good old gallop, Nube Negra, Captain Guinness, Edwardstone. First fence down the back, Edwardstone was beaten. You can see he's already off the bridle. And at the water jump, it's how far is Energumen going to win. That's how over this race was at a relatively early time. Captain Guinness has run a blinder. Editor de Geet, from all the way through winning handicap starting at this meeting, he's come an incredibly long way, but he just quite wasn't up to grade 1 standard on this occasion last year.
Like, I was arguing all the way through last season's Road to Cheltenham that the Queen Mother Champion Chase rather fell apart around Energumen's ears 2 seasons ago. Well, it happened again, but I can't keep arguing that.
History repeating itself, was it?
Yeah. But if we look back at Edwardstone, surely that was too bad to be true, wasn't it?
It was too bad to be true, but again, he has another year under his belt now. He's another year older, and how he gets on Sunday will determine what path he chooses this season.
Well, Alan King was talking about going up in trip, and then Energumen, unfortunately, was out, so that could change
see
plans.
What happens in the Schlur. If he could beat John Bon, he'd be thinking, whoa, there's a Tingle Creek there to be won.
Well, quite. Mentioned John Bon. Let's take a look at the Arkle. We've already discussed El Fabiola and John Bon. This is El Fabiola's finest hour.
See 3 of the first 4 home here this weekend. El Fabiola's going to wait for the hilly way. Dysart Dynamo rocks along. John Bon sits behind him. Now, the first 2 fences, John Bon's second fence, Brave, really quick and slick. But the further he goes, there again, Brave. That's the way 2-milers jump. But John Bon, and when I look back at it, I could see it. This fence here gets right in and he's slow. Look at the gap Dysart Dynamo gets on him. Down to the next fence again. John Bon shimmies in for Aidan Coleman and loses more ground. That's not how champion chasers jump. Ditch, pop, next fence, does the very same thing, gets in and pops. You have to be much quicker, and especially if he's going to improve up to and catch El Fabiolo, he has to be attacking his fences. Now, he has the scope and he has the bravery, but he has to do that consistently. St. Roy and Dysart Dynamo run the 4 trio. El Fabiolo does in a high senior at the last and gets away with it. Dysart Dynamo got up. 2 of those run in the 4 trio. John Bon runs in the Schlur, but John Bon's jumping has to be consistently better if he's going to get anywhere near El Fabiolo.
You're making an argument for him stepping up to the Ryanair, aren't you? Essentially there.
I don't know. I think he has it in him to jump. And he has that scope and that power, but he just needs to do it more consistently.
OK, well, this is how things stand as far as the betting has the Queen Mother Champion Chase. Obviously, we've got lots to discuss between now and then, and there are 2 significant races this very weekend. We start at Navan on Saturday with the Bar 1 for Tria Chase. These are the decks. Significant horses here. Saint-Ouen, Captain Guinness, Dysart Dynamo.
Yeah, they are. And look, depending on whichever one will be fittest this time of year, but Dysart Dynamo has a good record fresh.
You suspect that he likes to dominate lesser horses? I get that vibe from you.
I do. I thought Danny had a good handle on him here in last year's Arkle, but he was well beaten when he fell at the last. I do. I think he has to improve a bit. OK,
and will he be able to dominate there?
Depends on what humour Captain Guinness is in.
Yes, indeed. OK, and then the following day, we have the Schlur. This has been won the last twice by Nube Negra, but this is a much tougher gig than either of his previous 2, and it was a non-event this time last year. John Bon, the 1-2 favourite. Edwardstone, and this will decide his season's campaign. Will Bambridge come over? And Editor de Geet, who's already run this season and will be definitely better for that quite well-beaten performance in the Haldon Gold Cup. He's jocked up already.
Yeah, but he'll need to be. I'm not sure just one run 9 days ago is going to be enough to get him in front of John Bonnet Edberstone.
Yeah, it was very much a preparatory run, I felt. You know, he was held up. He didn't sort of dominate in the way that he
There
can.
was turmoil about that last year as well, wasn't there?
It was true. So that is the first taste of the road of this season. Thank you very much for your thoughts so far. We've got another 4 months of this to go, you know.
I'm off to warm up.
Fair enough, I'll let you do that. OK, so if you want some more, don't forget to go to the racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham website. That's where you'll find my column and other things. Thanks for watching this evening. We'll see you next week.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.